This is Steve Laffey's Fixing America. And now, broadcasting live from the Fixing America Command Center in Fort Collins, Colorado, here is your host, Steve Laffey.
Hey, good afternoon. It's a beautiful Tuesday here in Fort Collins, Colorado. It's supposed to snow, not a cloud in the sky. I've learned in the last 3.5 years, unlike where I've lived before, where the weather was generally predictable, that people here, because of the mountains, don't have a clue. And so I've taken to not really much watching the weather every night. But it's Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We're ready to go today. We've got Newsday Tuesday. I did not coin that term. I will take no ownership of it, unless it turns out to be very successful. But we're at laffeyradio.com. We're live right now, but you can tune in at laffeyradio.com. If you tell someone about the show, people have been doing this. You missed the show, it's on demand. About 40 minutes or 20 minutes after the show is over, we come on at 3 o'clock Eastern time. We're on Facebook. I really appreciate now we're a lot of people are liking it. So go there and like it. Like the show, get it spread around. We're on Twitter. We put out these tweets. I guess Twitter's going public. No, I've missed the boat on some of these things from my old investment days, but Twitter doesn't seem to me to have the staying power that, say, some of the other ones like Google did a long time ago, where I thought that would actually be a pretty good investment. But we're out there. We still use it. A lot of these things you use, I don't know how they're going to make money, but I would use it, and I use it all the time. We put things out. We've been putting up the Laffey Minute. Check out our new Laffey Minute. You're going to get one of those every day. Fixing America Presents. We came out with a new one this week. We'll have a couple of those coming out, probably at least once a week. And so here we are on Newsday Tuesday. And I was just thinking this morning when I got up, I was really never involved at all. And as one of these people that had to have their own tools, I didn't even know how to use tools till I moved out to Colorado. I really didn't change the light bulbs. It was like, light bulbs, I got to get up on a ladder. I don't have a ladder. Do I even have a ladder? So, but now I'm a pretty handy guy. I'm fixing a lot of things, much to the amazement of my wife and some of my older children. The little ones think I've been doing this forever. But I get up sometimes in the morning, I'm like, I need certain things. I have a ranch yet. I don't have a big ranch, but I want more things than I could ever possibly handle on the ranch. I've always been wanting to get. I was looking at it again. In fact, I hope I get on TV one day and someone says, well, what newspapers do you read in the morning, Steve Laffey or Mayor Laffey, or whatever you want to call me? And I'll be like, instead of like not having anything to say, I'd be like, I get the Fence Post. And I'd be like, the Fence Post? Oh, yeah, I get all my news out of the Fence Post. And High Plains Journal, which is these rural magazines that I love because they got recipes in them. You know, it's just a great break away from the nonsense. It's in the normal newspaper or on TV. But I want to get one of these square, round, portable corrals made by Diamond W. Corral. Maybe we'll get them to advertise. These are corrals that come on wheels. And I have no need for it at all. And I've been looking at it for 3 years thinking, I really got to get one of these things. I can't justify. They're like $12,000. What you do with these things, you go out into a big field and you round the cows up and run them through, put them in the head gates, and then let them out. You put them in these corrals. Then you pack it up and leave. Put it on the back of your truck. Not on the back, but you tow it behind your truck. And I just always want to have one of those. I think I might go get one today. You know, it's like threatening every day to get by my wife. Every Sunday when we go to church, I tell the kids we're going to go by and get they love these bugs, these Volkswagen bugs, the Herbie cars they call them. And they see them going around, they start punching each other in the car. I really don't get involved in them, so I threaten to buy one, except they're not made in America, so I'm not going to buy one. So, and today, by the way, I'm wearing my Snap shirt if you're viewing today. This is Snap Shirt Tuesday also, and I dedicate the show to Louis Free, my Snap Shirt buddy out there in Ohio. But these are American-made shirts. I've been looking for American-made shirts. I got to get some more because I'm sort of running out of shirts to wear in the show. We don't want you to think we did like 12 shows in one day, so I put on different shirts every day. And I can't have too many thin stripes because I guess it just blurs everything, so which might be good for me. But I got the Snap shirt, and the Snap shirts are down in Denver, Colorado. It's like the original Snap shirt company. You can unsnap them, and if you have to get your clothes off quickly, I guess you just snap them off. But they're the real West shirts, and I love wearing them. And so it's Snap shirt. I don't have too many. I got two of them that I got to get more. But I got a blue one and a white one, so maybe someday I'll wear the white one out here. The other thing going on before we get going to some of these news stories is that I tell you, this is the thing about joining organizations. If you're out there, we're members of the 4-H. We do this stuff with Dexter cows. My wife is such a great photographer. Her picture is on the cover of the American Dexter Cattle Association website. She won the national championship. And here's how just little things happen where you make friends in the cow industry. That's why the rural life is so great. I don't think I can ever really go back to living in the city again proper. A lady in New Zealand looks at this picture on the website. She runs New Zealand Dexter Cattle Society, I guess. And she just wants to put it on the cover of her. The picture's so good, she wants it on the cover of her magazine. So she doesn't want to, break any laws. So she emails over, finds who I am. I email back. Now she's come to stay at the house with her husband after they go to Yellowstone, and we're going to try to head out to New Zealand. And she says we can stay with her, all because we have this connection on these sort of rare Dexter cows. And it's just an amazing thing that happens when you're involved in sort of the rural lifestyle. There's a trust that builds up when you're out here in the rural areas. And I live in the city, but I'm always out in the rural areas with my friends, and they got a lot more cows than I do, know a lot more than I do. And whether I'm out there with my, the shooting places and so forth, practicing with my guns, or I'm out examining what they do with the cows, or the sale barn. Don't even know what a sale barn was years ago. Go to the sale barn just to see the auction of cows. None of them I'm going to buy. My rarer Dexter cows, you can't get them in a sale barn. They're too expensive. So that's what I do. That's what I do during the day. But today is a day about lots of different stories, and I thought we'd start talking about what today's election day. And let's talk about the New Jersey governor's race first. There are three big races going on today, and the troubling one is in New York City. We'll get to that in a minute. But the first one's in New Jersey, and the newspapers all over, the mainstream newspapers, are all trying to set up Governor Chris Christie as like the hope for the next election cycle for presidency. And they're trying to make sure that people know that if he can win today in a big way, of course, he's going to win in a big way. Let me tell you how it works, since I'm from Rhode Island, how it works. If you're really pretend to fight the unions, and you really pretend to have a budget, and you pretend to care about, fighting on the pension issues, but you do nothing about it, the Democrats love you. They're going to vote for you. Winning landslide happens in Rhode Island all the time with a faux Republican. And so it has nothing to do with a national race, but the mainstream people want Chris Christie to be the nominee. It's going to be a very difficult thing, I would imagine, but they want him to be, because once he gets there, the choice between the real Democrat and the faux Democrat, which is Chris Christie, will always go to the real Democrat. There'll be lots of people like the Romney race who will just stay home. They won't come out. Call them whatever you want. There'll be all terms about them. There'll be the religious right. There'll be the talk listening radio heads. It'll be the Christian right. Whatever people want to say. There'll be the Tea Party. People will stay home. And that's how the Democrats can win, because they won't really there won't be a real choice. The people in the middle will say, well, I better go for that guy's really the Democrat over there, that lady, I guess, Hillary Clinton. And so that's what's really going on in New Jersey today. New Jersey, and this is, Chris Christie might be a great guy. I've never met him. But let's face it, if it's 4 years of being the governor, and the state of New Jersey is still tied with Rhode Island, my home state, as in last place in everything you can imagine, economic growth, pension funding, places you'd like to retire to, et cetera, although there's some great places in Rhode Island and in New Jersey, sure, that you could retire to. The taxes are just too high. That's why people don't do it. It's why they flee to Florida if there's no state income tax, and they don't tax pensions in Florida and so forth, and they go to other places where it's a little bit warmer, I suppose. But what they're saying in the newspaper today has nothing to do with reality. I mean, Chris Christie, who ran on a record of attacking, I guess it was John Corzine, who, because he was with Goldman Sachs, didn't go to jail after he bankrupted MF Global when he got out of office. Of course, he was the guy going down the highway at 100 miles an hour with the state trooper. It was just, the guy was nuts. But because he worked for Goldman Sachs, the largest investment bank, I guess it's really a bank, he avoided jail time. And I guess no one's going to go to jail. Another story going on today about SAC Capital. But so that's a story in New Jersey. Truthfully, there really isn't much of a national implication, except the fact that he will win by a lot, it looks like. But they didn't put up a serious candidate because the Democrats are happy. As long as that they don't touch that pension program, really. As long as they get what kind of they want, they're happy to have Chris Christie fuddle around with the numbers. I mean, he's not a financial expert. He's a lawyer. So he's using one-time, sources of gains to plug holes. And in fact, when he was going around crying about the hurricane that came through, which is a terrible hurricane. Don't get me wrong, people were devastated. That's not the point. The point is the $61 billion he wanted, and I guess he got most of it, and kept going after it and walking around saying, I need this money, I need this money. I bet you they'll find out after, if he is the nominee, they'll find it really wasn't for Sandy relief victims. A lot of it was to plug budget holes. That's what they do. And so the thought process that some guy in Nebraska is going to continue to pay for the damages that go to people who live too close to the shore, or vice versa, when the crops get wiped out, some guy in New Jersey who's just out there making a regular living is going to pay for this guy's crops that because he planted the wrong crops, the sun didn't shine, the rain came too much. Because he does that, he's going to get something from the federal government that really comes from all of us. That's what has to stop. But the short version today of the New Jersey governor's race is simply that he will win in a landslide. He really is more of a Democrat than a Republican. He really hasn't done much in the fiscal side at all to help New Jersey. But he's doing that musical chairs, and he's thinking, I'm getting out of this one. I'm getting into the national race. Avoided it last time, but I'm going to get into it, and they won't focus on New Jersey. But I got news for you. They will. The other race in Virginia is actually, we're going from less troubling, because if they had elected a Democrat in New Jersey instead of Governor Chris Christie, be like the same thing. So it wouldn't be, there wouldn't be no difference in New Jersey. It's still fading away. It's a very troubled place. Lots of crime, so forth. Lives off the largesse of being next to New York, in between New York and Philadelphia. But it's a lot of problems in New Jersey. But the other one in Virginia, now there's a race between McAuliffe and Cuccinelli is his name. And what they're going to portray on that race tomorrow morning is simply that Cuccinelli was too conservative. Now, I don't know how it's going to turn out. I would imagine that the polls are correct. I imagine that it really did hurt. The government shutdown really did hurt the Republican candidate in Virginia. Why? It's right before the election. There's a lot of federal workers who live in Virginia, right? There's an awful lot. There's too many federal workers, and there's too many living in Virginia. But a lot of those people probably got energized, or if there was some of them on the sidelines about who they were going to vote for, they made a decision they're going to vote Democrat. And that's one of the things that will come back to haunt Senator Cruz and Senator Lee, Senator Cruz out of Texas and Senator Lee out of Utah. That will come back to haunt them over the years to come, over the next couple of years in their political careers. But it's troubling because Terry McAuliffe is not really a businessman. He's a Democratic politician. He ran the Democratic Party. And so he didn't have much to say about running Virginia. He doesn't have much to do about it. It's not really what he wants to do. He wants power. And because of his name recognition, his money-raising ability for, yes, President Clinton, they put him in here to run. I guess it's the second time he's tried to run. And this time it looks like he'll win. And if he does, it's going to be a terrible, terrible thing for the country in many respects, because the governors of these states have a great deal of power when it comes to national elections. So Virginia, which was a conservative state, I guess, is really not anymore. And the thought process of putting Cuccinelli out on the far right, and he is a conservative guy, that strategy has worked. The strange thing is it really has been the money-raising ability that's been going on over there for the Democrats versus the Republicans. I would have thought that the money would have been about even. But really, the ads in the last week have been 10-1 for McAuliffe, the Democratic candidate. So if there becomes a Democratic governor for the next 4 years, at least, of Virginia, that's a troubling thing for the Republicans. I mean, not that there are really any Republicans who are running for president today who really have any clue what they're doing or would do a great job or would actually do some of the things we've talked about in the show. Far from it. But it becomes a very troubling thing. But the most troubling race in today's election day, outside of Colorado, because I live in Colorado, the most troubling one is this mayorship in New York. I've been to New York. I haven't been there in just a little while. I'm heading there in December. But I remember distinctly, before Rudy Giuliani was elected, I had gotten a job there. I was working on Payne Weber. And it was a terrible place to work. I moved as quickly as I could out to Connecticut and commuted in an hour and a half each way, which I hated, which ultimately got me to move down to Memphis, Tennessee, and have a very short commute, and end up meeting my wife and having 5 more kids. But there really were these squeegee guys would threaten you when you came in a car. You would be driving a car, would come to a light, and a guy would approach with a thing to wash your car with, wash your windshield wiper thing, squeegee guy, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, should I give him a buck? Is he going to break the window? I mean, if you go to the subway, you'd be standing 5 rows back. You'd be walking around the whole time, looking around like the whole thing was, and this would be in the daytime. It was not a great place to live. And the progressive liberal people were in charge. And then came Rudy Giuliani. And he really transformed. And I took a lot when I was mayor of a medium-sized city. I took a lot of what he had done, the little things, getting rid of these people, getting them off the streets, prosecuting little crimes, making sure people weren't hopping turnstiles to go to the subways. And a lot of little things he did. New York became, for a big city, a very safe place. I always felt pretty safe there when he, after a year or two after he was the mayor. And I must say, I'm not a big fan of Bloomberg, who became the mayor, and I'm really not a fan of changing the Constitution to stay in office longer. He got away with it. And quite frankly, he's a pretty unpopular guy. As I remember, when he won his 3rd term 4 years ago, I guess today, it was a situation that I think he spent over $100 million of his personal wealth. I think the Democratic candidate had $5 million, maybe 10, and he only won like 53-47. So the tide was already turning away. But one thing about Bloomberg, he did run a pretty tight ship. We talked yesterday, the silliness of his, soda cup stuff, trying to go for the consumers rather than the producers on getting people healthy. It was silly. It was just misguided, silly. But a lot of stuff remained safe. And so, of course, when Giuliani decided to run for president, 2007, I guess, we had a fundraiser for him in Rhode Island, and I got to meet him, and I met him, I think, twice since then. Couldn't be a nicer guy. I mean, and of course, he and I differ on some of the social issues, but I knew that if he was the president, in fact, he's really the last person I even thought about really supporting. No, I shouldn't say that. The governor of South Carolina, before he had his problems, was the other guy. But Rudy was the only guy I actually actively supported. And many of my conservative friends, I couldn't believe it because he wasn't quote unquote conservative, but he was on many of the issues. Like, if you wanted law and order in the country, and you wanted some guy that understood the problems, and to go after the big problems first, that was Rudy Giuliani. But this guy De Blasio, he's going to win in a big landslide, and he is not just like a quasi-Democrat. He's a real left-wing progressive guy. He still thinks the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, the terrorists, he thinks they were the greatest. He was happy. He helped them. It's amazing. It's amazing. There's no shame. There's nothing that can bar the people right now, as in the world we live in. You can do whatever you want. You can. Heck, you can. Hey, let's. I didn't do any clips here. Let's go to you can do whatever you want. You could in Toronto. Mayor Rob Ford today. I'll play it after the break when we come back. But the mayor of Toronto, Rob Ford, I guess he's been smoking crack. The guy's been smoking crack. He's not resigning. He's been smoking crack cocaine while he's the mayor. It's incredible what people do. But these 3 elections that are happening today, one's going to be what we expect, as far as the result. The one in Virginia, I don't know. I guess the Republican candidate could pull it out. I don't think he will. But the one in New York with de Blasio, the city of New York is going to, in fact, if you own real estate there now, it's time now to get out. Stuff is going way up. It's time to get out. I'll give you some advice. It's time to go somewhere else, because in 3 or 4 years or less, it's going to falter in a big way, and people won't go there. There's lots of other cities they can go to. It's already a massively high tax. Anyway, it's Steve Laffey. It's Newsday Tuesday. We've covered different subjects. We'll be back with some more after this break. But like us on Facebook, Laffey Radio. We're LaffeyRadio.com, and we'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages. JP Morgan's recent agreement to pay $13 billion for packaging fraudulent loans before the financial crisis of 2008 is another indication that much is still wrong with our financial sector. No contrition, no arrests, and now the country is in worse shape. Join Laffey this Wednesday at 3 p.m. as he talks about the solutions to this mega problem. Only on Steve Laffey's Fixing America.
Today in school, I learned a lot. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me. In English, I learned that I'm disgusting. And in physics, I learned that I'm a loser.
Today in school,
In math,
I learned that I'm ugly and useless.
trash.
And in gym,
In biology,
I learned that I'm pathetic
that I'm fat
and a
and
joke.
stupid.
In history,
Today in
I learned that I'm trash.
Today in school, I learned that I have no friends.
In biology,
In English, I learned that I
I
make
learned
people
that I'm fat and
sick.
stupid.
And in
And at lunch, I learned that I sit on my own because I smell.
That I'm a loser.
and in
In chemistry, I learned that no one likes
In biology,
In chemistry,
I learned that I'm fat and stupid.
In English,
And in math,
because
I learned that I'm trash.
the only thing I didn't learn in school
The
today
only thing I didn't learn today.
the only thing I didn't learn
Is why no one ever helps.
Kids witness bullying every day. They want to help, but they don't know how. Teach them how to stop bullying and be more than a bystander at stopbullying.gov. A message from the Ad Council.
So you take the mouse and click over there, and then you can choose someone you want to call.
My niece. I click here.
This is Louisa. Recently, she got help going online to chat with her family back home.
Okay, so then you want to hit that green button.
This is her first time on the internet and her first time seeing her niece in 5 years. Louisa doesn't know what to expect.
Luisa? Oh my gosh. There she is. This is amazing.
It's so good to see you. You look so pretty.
But this is definitely way beyond.
Oh my gosh.
See what the internet can help you do at everyoneon.org or call 1-855-387-9166 to find a free training class near you. That's 1-855-387-9166.
Oh, I've missed you.
Oh, me too.
Brought to you by Connect to Compete and the Ad Council.
I'm always up for a challenge. It's the feeling of accomplishment that drives me. And there's no better challenge than serving part-time in the Coast Guard Reserve. I protect my country, work with the best and brightest. I get great pay and benefits in return. The Coast Guard Reserve is important work. I get to serve my community, and it's always rewarding.
If you were born ready, there's a new challenge waiting for you. Learn about serving part-time at gocoastguard.com/reserve.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
President Obama has promised repeatedly that his administration would not force people off of plans they want.
If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance. No government takeover. Nobody's changing what you've got if you're happy with it.
But some business advocates say small companies now won't be able to shop for a better health care deal without triggering the new government regulations.
And they'll have to go out and either start searching for more expensive plans or consider the possibility of getting rid of coverage altogether.
Hey, it's Steve Laffey. We're back. We're back here at Steve Laffey's Fixing America, and we've gone through. It's called Newsday Tuesday. Sort of, we're taking on this. Not usually we take on one subject, and we go back to that one subject after every break. Today we're taking on a bunch of different subjects. What's recently been in the news, and what's recently been in the news, and this is just silliness. I mean, first of all, for the president to say you can keep your policy. And for people all over the media or the American public not even to know it wasn't true, I had to tell you, I know it wasn't true. I mean, there have been articles about this. They always come at the end where it's like, oh, nobody knew. I guess people didn't know that you couldn't keep your policy, but there's like 18 million people that just got thrown off their policies and had to get new ones. I'm grandfathered in, I guess. So I've got this policy that, I just renewed for another year before they kicked me off because I do my own stuff, my family. And, but it was obviously just a bald-faced lie. Now, I've read in the New York Times, I guess, where it was sort of like, wasn't a lie, it just sort of didn't speak directly. I mean, people just keep making excuses. No, it was just a bald-faced lie. I mean, there was never a time where they said the grandfather clause, where you can keep it if you've been back before. And the other thing that happens all the time, they got to come up. By the way, they're really good in this Democratic administration. They're better than the last Republican administration. They're really good about someone come up with some talking point quick, but it's almost insulting. This is why the president, I don't think, understands when you say, well, we're going to replace your substandard plan. There's millions of people out there thought that plan was fine. And so what's the next step that we're finding out? And this is the front page story today in many papers. But one of it is that, oh, gee, shocking. Young avoid new health plans. The younger people are avoiding signing on to Obamacare. And it's almost like there's this denial of human nature that goes on all the time. And even when human nature works its way into a situation like it does with healthcare, and it does in everything, they're shocked. There's never like, oh yeah, 3 years ago I should have figured that out. Or, yes, I figured out human nature now. Well, if you're really sick and you're being thrown off a plan, or you think you can get on a plan, you're going to spend more time on the computer, typing it in, getting it ready. I got to get on. You're going to be one of those people. You're going to sit there half the day. You're going to say, honey, I still can't get on this crazy system, but you sit here. Oh, there's a phone number to call. Let's call the phone number. If you really are sick, you're going to spend a lot more time than the 25-year-old healthy guy out playing basketball somewhere in the street. So that person's not signing up. Now, the Obama administration will tell you the young people are going to sign up at the very end. I bet you there's a lot of them who don't sign up. Why would they? I mean, now you can just present in the hospital. In fact, I imagine people are just going to form their own whole lives as LLCs and just present themselves as indigent is the way people are going to get around some of this stuff, or try to. This is an unbelievable disaster. How anybody could have thought, by the way, the Wall Street Journal today writes this particular article about the young people as if it's new news, as if it was something that they maybe didn't understand was going to happen. But it was always going to happen. That people, just what happens when people are really sick, they're going to spend a lot of time trying to get on. Now, some of these people have never had insurance, so it's going to be great for them to have some insurance. But it's going to make it very, very costly. As I said 2 years ago when I made the movie Fixing America, I must have said it. I mean, it's on tape. The thought process is we're going to insure a lot more people for less money, especially when the people we're going to start to insure are going to be going to be sicker or have more problems. It was just a bald-faced lie. This is going to bankrupt. Well, if anything, it's going to be one of the things that helps bankrupt America, that makes people finally see that we are bankrupt, and it's going to happen. But that's one of the news stories today. The people are, hey, guess what, guys? It's a front page story above the fold. Younger people are not signing up for the Obama health care plan, the national health care plan, the one where you get fined. And guess what? The people who run the country, they don't care. And now because Republicans have lost in this issue, they're sort of just playing up this one thing that the system doesn't work, which is a good way to play it up if you want to play politics. I mean, it really doesn't work. I imagine that the website, it may be a long time before it works. But anyway, there's a lot of other stories to cover here today, too. In fact, one of them is a story that sort of relates to what we're going to be talking about tomorrow with J.P. Morgan. But in the news today, and not everybody knows about this company, but it gets at this system that companies are too big, I guess. Prosecutors are too lazy. But since 2008, almost nobody has gone to jail for insider trading, for passing bad loans on, for putting our whole country at risk. Nobody has really gone to jail. This morning, SAC Capital, I call it SAC Capital, but SAC Capital, they agreed to plead guilty in insider trading settlement, and they're going to pay $1.8 billion. I know that if you've been reading the paper or what, you'd be seeing these numbers come out. And the numbers are like this one, $1.8 billion. It's probably like 1,000 people's lifetime earnings. I don't have a calculator here, but it's lifetime earnings. It's an enormous amount of money. But the guy who runs the firm, he's not going to jail. And it begs the question, how bad do you have to be? What kind of insider trading or federal laws do you have to violate to go to jail? Because the guy's going to keep about $8 billion of his own money. $8 billion. I guess the guy who runs this thing, Steve Cohen, I guess he's one of the biggest art collectors in the world. What do you have to do? Even in the 2000s, they had the WorldCom people go to jail, Bernie Ebbers. You had the Enron people go to jail. But since 2008, I guess there's a couple people. I guess there's a couple people associated with that they caught first. A guy named Robbie, who was a trader also. I guess he's in jail. I'm racking my brains. There ought to be an article about, there ought to be outrage. But the American people, we're just letting this go by. I would much rather see the guy go to jail and pay a $1.1 billion fine, because that would get people to start changing their tune. But how can they find them guilty of insider trading and not send anybody to jail? Or certainly not the head guy who's going to get off basically scot-free. How do they not get to him? I guess he had a system set up, but how could they be guilty of insider trading? There's another way to look at it. How are you guilty of insider trading anyway? And why do they settle? Well, they settle because the guy keeps $8 billion. I mean, it's really a remarkable situation. This guy was trying to not settle at all. He wanted to be referred to when he died as one of the great, hedge fund managers of all time, the George Soros guys and so forth, that have really done it for many years and then got out and weren't indicted. But he got indicted, and they're going to plead guilty. But they allude to Mr. Cohen, it says, without naming him. Now, the way he did this, the way his system was, it's actually a pretty good system if you wanted to, sort of what I did when I was at Morgan Keegan in a very small way. But you'd bring people in with their best ideas, and then you try to concoct which of the best ideas were the best. That's how you invested your money. And he was probably very, very good at reading people, but somebody is guilty. A lot of people probably are. I mean, he did have 25% returns every year for like 20 years. I mean, it was incredible, the returns. So whereas Bernie Madoff is now trying to tell people that everybody knew about this, including J.P. Morgan and about his scam, supposedly, I guess everybody's going to get off scot-free in this one. So it still amazes me. Another story today, I just want to we'll get to some other stories here before we get to the next break here. But here's another one about human nature. When the first oil shock came back in 73, all the stuff about carpooling and taking buses, light rail was going to take over. No one was going to commute. No one's going to drive their car. You're going to leave it at home. It never worked out. It got up to a peak, I don't know, probably about 10 years ago maybe, or maybe back in 08, where when we had oil prices go, people started to commute. That means getting 2 or 3 guys who go in the right direction. We're all going north. We're all heading to Denver here from Fort Collins to work, so I'll pick you up at 7:30 and we'll carpool down there. They have all sorts of carpooling lanes. If more than two or more people are in a lane, you see this in Boston, you see it in Denver here, then you can go into a certain lane and go faster, I guess. 2 or more people. They think you're carpooling. Me, with 5, 6 kids, I seems like I always have enough people. We just pull into that lane and keep going. Then there's times where you pay money to do it and times when you don't. But what they always forgot about is that when I'm commuting, or whenever I got to do to Denver, one, it's very hard to get everybody to go in the same direction, the same place, at the same time. 2, the lack of productivity when you're in the car. I'm a very productive person in my car. Heck, when I was the mayor, I'd be calling customers, clients, voters, whatever you want to call them, on my way down to teach at University of Rhode Island. I'd be calling them. I have my hands free driving, so forth. I'm very productive in the car. And no texting, no nothing like that. But you can be very productive in the car, get a lot of things done. There's 3 or 4 people you haven't. You can't all do that with 4 people sitting in a car. So this is sort of ending here. It looks like carpooling is sort of going away. It's now below 10% of the people carpool. I bet you it's way below that. It just was always too high. But the people on the far left, whether they're in California, you're going to build another rail line. the whole situation, with Amtrak being funded by the government, they're never going to stop. They want everybody to do things their way. They think that's going to save energy. That's not going to save. Overall, it's just so much less productive. By the way, another story. Here's one I really want to talk to you about. This is my shocker of the day. I just couldn't believe this. This happens from time to time where you read a story and you say to yourself, how could this be? How could this go on for like 60 years? Yesterday it was announced in Germany that about $1 billion+ worth of Nazi era art, stuff that was stolen from individuals, Nazis took it, they hid it, they thought it was gone. No one knew what happened to this artwork, including some Picassos, was found in one guy's apartment who's like 80 years old. Cache of Nazi seized art discovered in Munich apartment. Works by artists including Matisse, Picasso, estimated to be worth about $1.3 billion. It's 1,500 artworks. They show a picture of the guy's apartment. He's an 80-year-old guy. His father was the guy who took it. So he was a young man. The father died in like the 50s. Father was a Nazi guy and kept it. And no one had any idea. So this guy kept a secret of like $1 billion plus. Now, let's say 20 years ago it was $500 million, let's say. I don't know what it was, but it was an awful lot of money. Try thinking about moving and where you'd keep 1,500 works of art, all of them worth some money, and moving them around over the years. The apartment that they show can't possibly be built in the 1950s. This stuff had to be moved from somewhere. Think of the room it takes up. Doesn't mention whether this guy is married or not, I don't think, or whether he had any kids, or how anybody could have not known about it. They only found out about it because I guess he needed some money and took one piece of artwork, went to an art dealer, someone figured it out, they sold this piece of artwork, and over a period of time, in fact, it was 2 years ago when they figured it out, they're just reporting it now. It's an incredible story. Now, hopefully this stuff will get back to the rightful owners. Of course, who are the rightful owners now after 2, 3, 4 generations go by? I guess there'll be some heirs who will get these paintings back if they can find them. It was a terrible, terrible thing. It reminds you of the terrible atrocities committed. If you start thinking about why Israel exists, you start thinking about what happened when they tried to wipe them all out. It's one of the reasons you say, well, we got to help out Israel. That's what I say. They got to help themselves more. But to see, it just blows your mind to think about how that actually could happen. How could it happen? Just an amazing story. We'll keep up on it. It's nothing to do with America per se or fixing America, but just one of those things. The other thing I just saw was an interesting story today. They're finally, this is what happens in New York. This is what's going to happen in New York with this. And I didn't really finish up with the new mayor who's going to be announced tonight. But he is so liberal that he's going to be one of those people that you can't search and frisk anybody. Everybody's got to have their own rights. Everybody's got to be get out of jail free card. And you're going to watch in New York City it become an unsafe city. But I think one more thing we'll talk about before the break, and we'll head into the break. But here's something that goes on in New York all the time. There's something called Airbnb. This is the internet for bed and breakfast in New York City. And I guess they're just trying to crack down because there's so many people who need the money, who have an extra loft or don't stay in the city very long, and they rent them out. They just put it on the internet, and people come into the city, which I think is a great idea. I got to be in New York City, and the difficulty of finding around Christmas time a hotel room. In fact, I can remember when I was in some form of management at Morgan Keegan, at least Equity Capital Markets back in the late 90s. And I always had this thing about staying. You could never stay for more than $250 a night in New York City. And it was very hard around Christmas time. But because I said you had to do it, I had to do it. I ended up one day walking into the 57th Street Hotel, Bridge Hotel, getting my room. Asking them where the elevator was for the 4th floor. There was no elevator. Walking up 4 flights of stairs. Walking by some kids playing some basketball in the corridor, going, oh my gosh. Getting to the room, there's no lock on the door. Look out the window, there's this bridge, the 57th Street Bridge. It's noisy as can be. And calling Elaine Antley, who was the lady who took care of my travel back when you had travel agents, saying, get me out of here. I walked downstairs. She found me another place. I paid the differential. It was like $350 or whatever up in New York, up in the Upper East Side. Had to go uptown to stay someplace. And I remember looking at them going, hey, there's some big mistake. I'm really sorry. I just thought there was something different going on here than what you guys are providing. And the guy looked at me and said, no problem, as if he knew like half the people walking into these, that was a B&B. It wasn't a hotel. It was just some guy renting out a room with no lock on the door. And so he just didn't get his $250 or $240 that night. So, but they're going after these people in New York in a big way. And it's going to be funny to watch because a lot of people have been doing that since that time, to this day. Anyway, Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We got Tuesday, Newsday. We'll come back with some Colorado news when we get back from break. We're on Facebook at Laffey Radio. We're at LaffeyRadio.com. One more break. We'll be back for the conclusion. Be right back.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. At 6 a.m., I make his breakfast. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. At 6 a.m., I make his breakfast. At 7 a.m., I shower. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. At 6 a.m., I make his breakfast. At 7 a.m., I shower. I start laundry at 8. At 10, we go for a walk. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m.
For those dealing with the daily struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. That's why AARP created a community with experts and other caregivers for advice, tips, and support. Together, let's help each other better care for ourselves and the ones we love. Visit aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Training is about more than muscle. It's about inner strength. So I push myself. That's why I serve in the United States Coast Guard. I train with the best. A team that shares my drive and commitment. We collect intelligence, guard our shores against drug smugglers, and keep our waterways safe because our nation expects more.
If you expect more, maybe you were born ready. Find out at GoCoastGuard.com.
This is Nnamdi Asamoah. I play football for the Philadelphia Eagles, but what I do off the field with United Way might be more important. I'm a volunteer tutor and mentor. Why? Because over 1 million kids a year drop out of school, and that's not okay. It takes 12 years to create a graduate, but it takes about the same time to create a dropout. And the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be me, or it could be you. Studies show that if we get to these kids earlier, their chances are better. And kids who read well by 3rd grade are more likely to graduate. So join me in United Way. Suit up and take the pledge. Become a volunteer reader, tutor, or mentor. Because when a child succeeds, we all succeed. Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Take the pledge at unitedway.org. Brought to you by United Way, the Ad Council, and the National Football League.
J.P. Morgan's recent agreement to pay $13 billion for packaging fraudulent loans before the financial crisis of 2008 is another indication that much is still wrong with our financial sector. No contrition, no arrests, and now the country is in worse shape. Join Laffey this Wednesday at 3 p.m. as he talks about the solutions to this mega problem. Only on Steve Laffey's Fixing America. And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
In a state of 5.1 million people, democracy is failing the minority, and a battle to break away has begun.
We're trying to address kind of a systemic issue within the country, which is this rural versus urban divide.
11 Colorado counties, approximately 400,000 citizens, are voting on a ballot initiative that would pave the way for creating the 51st U.S. state.
The urban areas can assert their will against the rural communities, and that it is like taxation without representation in that the rural communities don't have a voice to block the things that are being forced upon them.
From Vermont and North Carolina to Texas and California, the U.S. has seen a rapid spike in secession movements blazing across the nation in the past decade as the United States has grown extremely divided.
blazing across the nation. There's been this blazing across the nation of all these states splitting up as if it was 1851 to 61. I mean, did you hear the end of that clip? This is why we say this for Colorado. This is the ballot initiative. If you're listening, many of you are outside Colorado. It's made a lot of national news that there's a ballot initiative on 11 counties. About 400,000 people will be taking it to voting. And they'll be trying to decide whether some parts of Colorado, and by the way, some people want to take some part of Colorado and make it part of Wyoming. If you look at the map and look up, there's a part in the western slope that would be part of Wyoming. I'm not sure Wyoming wants them. Maybe they do. So this is really what's going on. And the ending, though, of blazing across America, I didn't know there were, until I met the man who's running this. And he's a great guy, by the way, totally wonderful guy. His name is Jeff. And I sat across from him at a hoedown before the great floods hit at a wonderful lady, Chuck and Roni's house out in a little east of here before the floods hit them. And half destroyed where we were sitting about 3 days later, I think it was. But he explained to me what he was doing, and I really hadn't been picking up on this 51st State Initiative stuff. But because here's the problem. It's sort of like when Ted Cruz went off to say, hey, you guys in the Senate, you get the votes to change. Oh, we can't get the votes to change. I'm in the U.S. Senate. Oh, okay. So we'll go for the government shutdown, then we'll really show them, and we'll stop Obamacare, but none of it was really going to happen. So it was just a bad plan with lack of leadership. When I asked this guy, Jeff, who runs the 51st State Initiative, what's really the plan, he talked about it in terms of, hey, we're going to try to do sort of a Missouri compromise, where back then one state came in slave, one came in free. And he said, we're going to bring in Puerto Rico. I was like, ain't no way I'm ever letting Puerto Rico become a state. I hate to, end my political career, not that I have any, or had a career, but I hate to inform everybody, but Puerto Rico's never becoming a state. What is that? We end up with mathematically a worse situation that we have today. So then he was explaining to me these other states, and I had never heard about these movements in other states. But one of the reasons that it's really not going to happen is that it has to get past both houses of the legislature in Colorado and both houses of Congress, the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. And if this started passing for other reasons that were other than what was the great reason of slavery, just because I lived in a rural area, there'd be a rural, I guess New York could do it. Everybody start doing it. There'd be like 250 states. When would it stop? And so it's not going to happen. So it's one of these things that's not going to happen. And so I guess they can keep talking about all we can get together and fight here in Colorado. So it brought up this whole thing, though, about Colorado. One of the things happening in Colorado is that we got in the news today that it's not too late to cast a last-minute ballot in Colorado election. We are one of these states where you vote early. And I think people have been voting for about a month. I hate it. I think it's wrong. It's one of these things that we just shouldn't allow. As sacrosanct as it can be, voting should be that way, where we all get together on the one day and say to ourselves, we're going to decide who's going to be the mayor, the governor, the state rep today. And you have to, one of these elections for president, something's going to happen. There's going to be early voting everywhere. It's going to be a giant election. And something like, let's play clip 4. Clip 4 is the Toronto mayor talking about smoking crack last year. That's going to happen. Let's play clip 4, boss, if we could. If we don't have it, well, clip 4, it's a clip where the mayor, Rob Ford, is talking about how we smoke crack. And you can only imagine if 95% of the people have voted and it's already in, he's won re-election. That's going to happen one day. It's absolutely going to happen. I just think we should vote on one day. But here in Colorado, we've got a situation where it's only, I guess probably, I bet you 4% of the people haven't voted. They're running over to hand in their ballots right now. And they make it very difficult. There really is no place to go vote in some respects. On some of these elections, you have to mail it in. So I have to mail it in. I prefer to vote on one day and take everybody to focus on it. And I think what's happened with that is that here in Colorado, a lot of people aren't focused on the election. We've got a great big, it looks like oh my gosh. It looks like I really screwed up technically here. So anyway, we're going to go on and guess I turned this thing down again. Some glitches up. They're all my fault here as we get this show going. But it looks as though there's Amendment 66, another very important ballot issue here in Colorado. And I've been down to give speeches against it, against Amendment 66. And it's one of those things where they're trying to not just raise taxes, make Colorado, instead of a flat tax income tax, a progressive tax income tax place. And that's going to change Colorado. It's also about all the money supposedly is going to kids, to kindergarten kids. It's $1 billion in taxes. And the money that's been spent by the people who want this progressive tax to come in, like Michael Bloomberg, I guess he's spending millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in Colorado because they know that Colorado was his test case. Can they get a liberal state right in the Mountain West? And there's a lot of Democrats in some of these other states like Montana say, but they're not progressive liberal Democrats mostly. They're environmental people and so forth. But can they get a progressive hold in Colorado? And it looks as though they might. It's a very, very dangerous thing. So Amendment 66 is something I've spoken out against. I've been down to speak about it in Colorado Springs. And my phrase I tried to use down there was that, hey, the kids never get the money. They just never get the money. So Colorado has a big day today. But because of early voting, it won't be as big as it was 20 years ago. It won't be like everybody voted today. We're going to watch the news tonight. We're going to see what we can do. We're not gearing up for one day. And I think it's just a very, very big mistake. Anyway, I think I got my mic set. There's a lot of other issues we can discuss here, too. I want to talk a little bit about this TSA shooting that happened. And we have a clip on that. TSA shooting, I think, is clip 3. Let's see if I can get that right.
I want you to update our viewers on precisely what you're learning. Go ahead.
Okay, so these are the details that we are learning. Apparently, a shooter entered the Terminal 3, approached a security checkpoint, and then shot a TSA security agent. It's not clear whether this person actually breached that checkpoint. We are told by intelligence source that in fact 2 people were shot, both the TSA agent, but also responding officers were able to wound the gunman, the shooter. We don't know what the condition of the gunman is, but we are being told that he was injured. Other people were or did sustain some injuries as they were running from all of this that was going on, that was happening. They are now searching the terminals just to make sure that this was a lone gunman. But right now, it does not appear that he had gone through any checkpoint or that once the shooting took place, he actually breached any checkpoint.
Well, that's going to be a whole nother discussion. But now the TSA, undoubtedly, I think I've already heard one report, these TSA people who were at our airports, they're going to want guns. And okay, and then there's going to be another call about gun violence and tragically, it's a tragic thing. When a person was killed, at least one person was going to be killed. It's tragedy. It's just one of those things that we're not going to change. There are going to be people, whether all guns are illegal or not, who are going to get a gun and they're going to go out and they're going to shoot somebody. And, of course, knowing these TSA agents weren't, again, it seems like almost all these shootings that happen, it's someone with a gun going somewhere where he really thinks someone doesn't have a gun. You almost never see, I sit in some of these restaurants in Colorado and I wonder to myself around me, as someone who has a concealed weapon permit, I bet you no one's coming in here. I bet you there's a lot of armed people. I bet you the person wouldn't get 3 or 4 feet. I bet you no one's going to come into this restaurant and start shooting it up. And so it seems like these people go, whether it was the shooting, the tragic shooting over a year ago here at a movie theater where lots of people were killed, that was a free gun zone, no gun zone. And so, but that's going to be another whole thing that's going to come up again. We've got, I wanted to play, one other thing I want to talk about before we play another clip. This is what happens, though, with the federal workers. And, we've had this shutdown. And what happened after the shutdown? We did a whole show on this, where all the people who had, 2.5 weeks off during the government shutdown, they got all their back pay. So they had all the days off of work. They got all their back pay. And guess what? It seems like it doesn't really affect the GDP of our country. But what are some employees doing? They're suing for their back pay anyway. They want double back pay. They already got the check, but they want another check for an equal amount. They've taken it to court, a class action lawsuit filed by Bureau of Prison employees. They want to be compensated, and the reason they want to get compensated is that they had trouble paying their bills. Everyone has been made whole at this point, but the plaintiffs argue that the paycheck delay because of the shutdown meant they had trouble paying their bills on time. Well, I don't mean to have very little sympathy or empathy for this situation, but you got to be, if you're fully employed by the federal government and getting probably your free health insurance and your pension, you got to have 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not saying 2 or 3 years like would be great to have, but 2 or 3 weeks. You're not a day-to-day barber. You're not the lady who's cutting my hair up at the local barber shop hoping customers are coming in. You know that money's coming in. But that's what they're going to do. They're going to go to court. I don't think they can win. But the brazenness of what happens with our federal workers sometimes, and there's probably I'm sure there's great federal workers, but we need a lot less of them. And they need to make less money. They now make double what you and I, not you and I personally, but what the average person makes in America. By the way, here's another story. But we're skipping through stories here. Americans say America is still number one right now. This is what gets about China. We're going to be doing a lot of shows about China. 36% of Americans polled thinks China will be the world's dominant superpower in 5 to 7 years. Now, 43% says it'll still be America. If that poll was taken 15 years ago, it'd be 1%. We are giving away our foreign policy. We are giving away our riches. We are giving away our manufacturing base and our technology to China in a way that's never been done before, that one superpower has done to another. And it's all because a small group of people are getting so filthy rich off of it, and they don't care about America. And it's got to be stopped. It's really, and by the way, that's something Chris Christie's never going to speak about. That's something the Republican candidates aren't going to speak about. You really only hear it here. I mean, you might hear it somewhere else, but you really only hear it here. By the way, here's one, and then maybe get to one more story here. It's about Eric Snowden. Germany wants Snowden, the man who gave away all this information about America and keeps giving it away, about spying and so forth. Germany, many of the German legislatures, people in the legislature, they would like him to come to Germany and testify about the spying thing. Well, this whole thing about spying that came up last week, remember the first day it came out? Germany's shocked that we were tapping Merkel's, the leader of Germany's phone. She had to know we were tapping it, or somebody was tapping it. She doesn't have a secure phone. The President of the United States today, he only has like 10 or 12 people they let him even text to because they all have the same secure phone. The Chinese are trying to text. Why do you think they have embassies here? Everybody walks down the street and shakes hands? No, they're massive listening devices. That's what. So, and by the way, let's just settle the argument here. Snowden's a traitor. Snowden's not. I mean, listen, how do we know? He fled. He fled the country. If he was a guy really trying to change America, he would have stayed and faced the punishment. He fled to Russia, one of our enemies. Well, we could do 20 more stories today, but let's sum it up. Sum it up with Snowden's a traitor. He fled the country. We've done a lot of different stories here today. Hope it's been a great show. We're going to try Newsday Tuesday, I think, several more times. We'll try some other formats, too. It's Stephen Laffey. We finished up the hour here. Steve Laffey's Fixing America at LaffeyRadio.com. Go right now. Send us a message on Facebook, Laffey Radio on Facebook. Tweet to us. We'd like to hear your messages. We brought up some of your calls. Not your calls yet. We brought up some of your questions, and we'll go through them as the show gets bigger. We're glad that you're liking it. We love doing the show. We're going to be back tomorrow with another show. It's going to be about J.P. Morgan. And until then, God bless you. God bless America. And we'll just check in tomorrow morning. Take care, America. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Steve Laffey's Fixing America radio program on the Laffey Radio Network. Fixing America is broadcast Monday through Friday afternoons at 3 p.m. right here at www.laffeyradio.com. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or account of this broadcast without the express written consent of Laffey Network, LLC is prohibited.